From the stand, here's your host, Steve Buss.
From the Ron Scott Communications Center, this is From the Stand, and this program is supported by the Commemorative Air Force. CAF's mission is education so that generations of Americans will value and support the contributions of military aviation in assuring our nation's freedom. Visit CAF's website, commemorativeairforce.org, for more information. This morning, aviation legend Hal Shevers drops by to talk about aviation exploring. We'll also talk to an original Tuskegee Airman, Lieutenant Colonel George Hardy, and go into the sky with the Great Lakes Drone Company. They were scheduled to be a part of the night air show last night, but they'll be part of the air show tonight, weather permitting, and we'll talk to them about what we'll see this evening. But right now, joining me is Steve Snyder, author of the book Shot Down, and it tells the story of a B-17 crew that was shot down over Europe in 1944. But you have a very special connection to that crew, don't you?
I sure do. The pilot was my dad, Howard Snyder. His plane was named the Susan Ruth after my oldest sister, who was 1 year old at the time that he went overseas. They were shot down over occupied Belgium on February 8th of 1944, and the book goes into detail about what happened to each member of the crew and about all the Belgian people that risked their lives trying to help them.
What was the impetus for you to write the book?
Oh gosh, growing up I knew the basic of my dad's World War II history. And he was a B-17 pilot. He was stationed with the 8th Air Force in England, flew bombing missions, and he was shot down over Belgium. And he was missing in action for 7 months, but he evaded capture. But it wasn't until I retired in 2009 that I really had the time to delve into my dad's war history in more detail. At that time, I had no intention of writing a book. I just wanted to go through all the material that they had kept from the war years, which was quite a bit. There were two significant items. One was a diary that my dad had written while he was missing in action about his plane being shot down, which was absolutely riveting. And the other was all the letters that my dad had written to my mother, and he was very candid in those letters. He talked about bombing missions, what life was like on the base, what life was like in England and London at the time, escapades of him and his crew. Reading those letters was absolutely fascinating. Became my passion. I started reading book after book about the air war over Europe. I went on the internet, spent countless hours doing research, started going to veterans reunions, World War II reunions, listening to the vets tell their stories. And finally, 3 years later, in 2012, I just came to the conclusion that the story of my dad and his crew was so compelling and so unique that it needed to be told and people needed to read about it, so I wrote a book.
Just like that.
Just like that.
And now you're an overnight sensation.
Yeah, well, it's won 25 book awards since it's been out. So
it has. It is. And we met last year in New Orleans, and I read the book at that time. And I've read a number of books on World War II and the air war in Europe, and many of them are entertaining but can be quite dry. But I always enjoyed the technique that you took in writing this book, where you actually talked about each individual crew member, because once they bailed out, they kind of got split up for a while before they got back together. But you told the story, and it's, I don't want to give away the end of the book, but it's not always a happy ending. But
No.
you feel, as I did, as I was reading it, I felt like I was with them through their journeys. How did you compile all of that information?
Yes, as you mentioned, it's just not about my dad, but
Right.
It's about each member of the crew, because something different happened to each guy. And 5 of the 10-man crew made it back, but 5 of them did not.
Right.
And it's all based on firsthand testimony by the people who were involved in the events that took place, either from my father or the crew members that came back and members of the Belgium underground. I probably wouldn't have written a book if it wasn't for 2 Belgian gentlemen who were young boys during the war. And they were greatly affected by it because they saw the atrocities committed by the Nazis firsthand. And later on in life, they became local historians, and they interviewed all these Belgian citizens and members of the underground about events that took place involving my dad and his crew. And they documented that, and they provided me with unbelievably detailed information about events that have been lost forever without their dedicated research. So I owe them a great debt.
Yes. Give us a brief synopsis of what happened to the Susan Ruth leading up to the point where they're shot down.
Okay, they were on a bombing mission to Frankfurt, Germany. They dropped their bombs successfully, but their bomb bay doors got hit by flak, and they couldn't get them back up. And as a result, that caused a drag in the plane. They lost airspeed. They lagged behind the formation. And they were singled out by 2 German Focke-Wulf 190 fighters. And in the ensuing air battle, the Susan Ruth was shot down. But both those German pilots were shot down as well. One piloted by Siegfried Merrick crashed, and he was killed in the plane. And the other was piloted by Hans Berger, who was able to bail out of the plane, and he made it through the war. And when I was doing my research, one day my wife casually mentioned, well, why don't you try to find the German pilot that shot your dad down? And I thought, well, this is a crazy idea. She doesn't know what she's talking about. But I did what she told. I was a good husband, did what she told me to do. And lo and behold, I found Hans Berger. And he became a translator after the war, so he speaks English. And he gave me some wonderful insight about what it was like to go up against the 8th Air Force that's in the book. He's 94 years old today. We've become friends. He lives in Munich, Germany.
Amazing.
Yeah.
To think all those years later that you'd be able to track him down through the, obviously through the wonders of the internet.
Yeah, because I thought, he probably most likely he died in the war, or it's 70 years later, he might have passed away, and I can't speak German, but everything just fell into place.
Along with writing the book, you've also been very involved with the reunion groups as well.
Yes, my dad was in the 306 bomb group stationed at Thurles, England, which is about 60 miles north of London. Their motto was first over Germany, because they were the first bomb group to bomb a target in Germany, Wilhelmshaven, on January 27th of 1943. And I joined the association, became board of directors, and I'm immediate past president of the 306. Our reunion actually is coming up in October in Southern California, on October 25th, 26th, and 27th. So, and it's our mission to remember, honor, and educate, to remember the air war over Europe, to honor the men who fought it, and to educate the public about it, predominantly younger generations, so they remember what those guys did.
That's right. We're talking with Steve Snyder, who is the author of the book Shot Down, which chronicles the experiences of the B-17 Susan Ruth in February of 1944. And I understand there's also a monument to the crew that's been created in Belgium.
Yes, in 1989, a monument was erected in southern Belgium, in Makenwas, Belgium, a little village there. And like most World War II vets, my dad didn't talk a lot about it before then, but he and the other 3 crew members that were still living at the time went over for the dedication. And there he was reunited with all those Belgian people that hid him during the war, saw the places and houses where he was hidden. And that brought it all back, and he started talking about it. And then my first trip, I've been to Belgium 4 times. My first trip was in 1994 with my parents, and that's when it became personal for me, because I saw everything firsthand.
And in the book, you also talk about something that we tend to forget about. We think about the air crews and the American airmen who were stationed in Europe, but the countries that were under occupation, we don't always think about and remember the trials and tribulations they went through, and especially with the Belgian people hiding American airmen, they were putting their lives absolutely on the line, not only for the Americans, but for their country as well.
Absolutely. My dad was hidden by Belgian people. I mentioned he was missing in action for 7 months. He was hidden by various Belgian people for a time, and then he got tired of hiding, so he joined the French resistance and started sabotaging German convoys. And then when Patton's Third Army came up through France after D-Day, he met up with them and got back to England. But the people who hid my dad, and any downed airmen for that matter, were unbelievably brave people. They risked not only their lives, but the lives of their friends and family. If the German secret police, the Gestapo, found out, they'd be arrested, tortured, sent to a concentration camp, or shot. And some of the Belgian people who aided my dad and some of his crew met that fate.
You are here this week telling the entire story. I encourage everyone to buy the book and read it. It is a wonderful read. As you said, also has been awarded a number of accolades. It is just a very riveting book. But you have a couple of presentations here on the EAA site today, or this week?
Yes, I've been making quite a few PowerPoint presentations. I have 2 more left tomorrow in the Welcome Center at 1 o'clock, and then Saturday at 11:30 in the Vetty Theater in the museum. Today I'll actually be signing copies of the book in the warehouse, EAA warehouse, at 11 o'clock.
That's over in Author's Corner. You have also... We became Facebook friends, so I've followed your travels around the country. You've made stops at some pretty impressive air shows, sharing your book with air show audiences.
Yeah, I go all over the United States, attending air shows, signing copies of my book, and I do a lot of speaking as well. It's a lot of fun. I meet a lot of great people. I'm fortunate to meet a lot of veterans and talk to them and be around warbirds, which I absolutely love.
Are there any stories, any experiences at those air shows that stand out to you?
Oh gosh, nothing that I can think of just off the top of my head in particular. But I've heard some great stories from some vets though that are quite humorous.
And probably can't be shared on the air. Yeah. I understand how that goes. Steve Snyder, we are pleased to have you here this morning. Again, your presentations, these PowerPoints are when?
Tomorrow at the EAA AirVenture Welcome Center at 1 o'clock, and then on Saturday in the museum at 11:30 in the Vetty Theater.
And you're signing books in the Author's Corner
today at 11 o'clock.
All right. The only thing we haven't been able to figure out yet is how I can get you to autograph my copy of the book, which is on a Kindle.
Well, the Kindle only has 4 pictures. The print book has over 200 time period photographs, so you can get that one today.
There you go. Well worth the purchase. Steve, thank you for being here, and enjoy the rest of AirVenture. This is From the Stand. This is EAA Radio.
Hi, I'm Al, and I was a command module pilot on Apollo 15.